to get the clay onto the wheel in a centered way. And to do so, use this portion as the strongest part of your hands, and you're going to force the clay up and down repeatedly until it feels like it's not wobbling. So it's coming up and now down. And up again and down. And I have no more wobble in it now, so I can go ahead. So I'm going to open the center, and this I plan to make a cylinder, so I'm leaving the clay on the wheel sort of tallish, sort of already beginning to think about what that is. And now I'm going to force either thumbs or fingers down into the center, leaving about a quarter to a half an inch of clay on the bottom, and then begin to just raise the clay up. Once you're opened out, that is, you have a center made, you need to compact the base, and then you can begin what are called your pulls. And this would be the first one. And I'm keeping in mind that I want this to stay as a cylinder and not get narrow, or not get bowl-shaped. I'm going to compact the base again, because that's a very fragile part of the pot. The second pull. I've slowed the speed down a little. The taller and the more pulls and the taller or wider the form is, the slower the wheel speed. And then I'm always going to compress my rim, because that's also fragile to the heat. Cleaning?
Yes.
Can you get me one of those wooden trimming tools? They look like a pointy, they're over there. They look like wooden knives, exactly. And then I might want to make it very even and straight, the sides. So first I'm going to trim the base. And then mop the water out of the bottom. So, and then I'm going to use a rib tool to just make the sides come up pretty straight. So that would be a cylinder, which is actually the basic form. Even when you're throwing rolls, you still sort of begin with a cylinder. Because the wheel itself, the motion of the wheel itself is always going to open the form out. So you start cylindrically, so to speak, and then move it into a ball shape, which we'll do next.
Julie, how far out are you shooting this? Are you shooting far?
Kite.
And I'm going to wire this off, and then put it aside to dry. So anyhow, that's a cylinder. And I have about 5 or 6 pounds of clay for a bowl. I wedged it. Okay, so it starts out, the bowl shape starts out the same as the cylinder with the centering, which is generally the most difficult part of learning. And sort of the foundation for having evenness in your product. So I'm gonna go up first and then down. This is about 5 or 6 pounds of clay for a nice bowl, nice size serving bowl. And the amount of time that you take to center, which sometimes seems like, oh, this is taking a long time, is probably the most important time. Because everything else comes from that foundation, the success of the pot. You can throw somewhat lump of clay that's not completely centered, but it'll never be as pleasant to throw for one thing, and as nicely formed for the second. So I'm going to again do the center, open out a little faster speed so my hands go down pretty gracefully toward the center. Now I'm going to open out and up like a cylinder first, and then, while the walls are still thick, I'll let the centrifugal force begin to make this into a ball on its own. When I threw the cylinder before, I was moving against the centrifugal force. Now I'm sort of letting it take over for me. So again, I'm compacting the base. Remember always that that's what's going to sit on the kiln shelf. And that's pretty stressful for the clay as well as the powder. And so that has to be well compressed. So now I'm going with the force, trying to make a graceful curve of the inside of the bowl. Keep in mind that you don't actually ever look, you think about it, on the outside of a bowl. You look into it. So you're looking for grace there. The higher and more open out the bowl is like the cylinder, the slower the wheel speed, because you're going to refinement now. I'm going to look again at the outside of the bowl and look for where I want to even things out. And I might do some of that evening out the thickness and thinness of the walls of the bowl with the rib, just for continuity. I want to decide about what kind of rim I want. You want to pay special attention to a rim because they're very susceptible to getting chipped, as well as being unpleasantly coarse, so they wouldn't be pleasant for the feel. It's more important, obviously, on drinking vessels than on bowls, but it still is a part that sort of confronts you, so it's worth the extra effort. And now I'm just looking underneath the bowl so I can see what kind of a form I want. Do I want it chubbier and more bellied out, or more triangular, cone-like, inverted cone? Do I want it to be more of a soup bowl, which is sort of closed form, more of a winter bowl, closed on the top, or a salad bowl, which tends to be a little bit more open? Both by use and design. Bowls that you want to use for mixing are a little bit more closed at the top, bend in, bowls that you want to use for serving might bend down. And then the same thing, trim off the foot. A little bit, clean it up. One can always clean this up when you're trimming, after the bowl is leather hard, but the less trimming you have to do, the happier. Pottery is best if it's done almost in one breath, one huge experience. The more you work it, the more it can easily begin to look overworked. And then we'll cut it off. Breath, one huge